What's up, everybody? Welcome to Talk Wrestling here on NoDQ.com and, of course, the NoDQ YouTube network, which you can get for the low price of only $0 a month. It's absolutely free, kids. You can't beat that price with a stick. Let's get to it. This is from Miguel _Duran 300 on Instagram. Thank you very much for your question, Miguel. Do you think Neville will ever be a credible WWE World Champion? No. I love Neville. I have liked him from the beginning. I liked him in the Indies as Pac, the Man of Gravity forgot back then even. But I don't think that the general WWE audience will ever buy into him being the guy. They like him. They like the Red Arrow. They like seeing him wrestle and fly through the air against their top draws. But U.S. champion, yes. Intercontinental champion, definitely. Definitely. Tag team champion with somebody. He was NXT champion with Corey Graves and with, I believe, Aiden English. Don't quote me. I'm not for sure. But World Heavyweight Champion, no. Neville is going to be a utility guy. He's got a great gimmick. He's an underdog. He can do great things in the air that guys haven't been able to do since the days of AJ Styles and TNA, and the guys are doing Ring of Honor now. But Neville will forever be the guy who doesn't break through the quote-unquote glass ceiling of the main event. Just my personal opinion. Blood Raven 88 wants to know my opinion on what the greatest submission move of all time is. I have quite a few. I've grown to appreciate submission wrestling more in my, shall we say, older years. I'm in my 30s now. I love the sharpshooter. I always did. I like when it's applied properly, like with Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Chris Benoit. I don't like it when it's applied horribly by people like The Rock, who could not apply a proper sharpshooter if his life depended on it. Also, for all the time he feuded with Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin could never apply a sharpshooter. It was god-awful. I hated his sharpshooter. It was ridiculous. But I always liked sharpshooter. Scorpion Deathlock from Sting, of course. Same move. Sting, he was the one that brought it to North America, and he perfected it, the master of the Scorpion. That was great. As much as it's taboo to say this name on wrestling shows in the last almost 10 years now, Chris Benoit was the best submission wrestler I ever saw compete live and on TV. The crippler crossface was the greatest submission move. It won him 2 world championships. He beat Triple H with that move. He beat Shawn Michaels with that move. He beat so many. He almost beat Bret Hart with it more than once. And for all that happened the last week of his life, Chris Benoit was probably the greatest submission wrestler I ever saw. And I will stick to that till the day I go in the ground, because he was great. Kurt Angle had the ankle lock later in his WWF, and then of course in his TNA career. So as I ramble on and try to make up for time here as I answer this question thoroughly, I guess my best answer would be the Scorpion Deathlock or the Sharpshooter, whatever you want to call it, because it was the first real submission move that I was exposed to as a youngster, discovering the business in the early 90s. I saw Sting do it in WCW, I saw Bret do it in the WWF, and it always seemed to win matches. It was my favorite, and I think it still is to this day. Let's see what we got here. Bazinga 270. I have to say, I've been doing these shows for almost 13 years. I love the social media names on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram, and the things you guys come up with is just freaking awesome. I love it. If Paul Heyman would have went to TNA years ago when the deal was in the works, do you think Brock would have eventually went to TNA instead of WWE? I can imagine Viacom would have paid him immensely, since TNA probably couldn't have afforded him at the time. If so, do you think it would have mattered in TNA's success? Well, there was a little bit of a tease of Brock Lesnar joining TNA when he and Angle fought over the IWGP Inoki recognized championship in 2007, I believe it was. And there was a tease that Brock may come to TNA to challenge for Angle's TNA championship. It never materialized. I think if Paul had gone to TNA, and if Brock would have worked out his issues with WWE lawsuit-wise when Paul went to TNA. If Paul had gone to TNA, I think they would have reunited there. I really do. I think that Brock loves working with Paul and vice versa, and I think that they would have done great things in TNA. Brock would have been a tremendous TNA World Heavyweight Champion. I think he would have been the most over TNA champion outside of Kurt Angle or AJ Styles that they ever had. And it would have done great business for TNA and for Dixie Carter. They may have turned them around as they were approaching the years where Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff took over. This is from Ricky Lawson 2012 on Instagram. I always wonder what your thoughts were on Jeff Jarrett's wrestling career. I was watching the rise and fall of WCW, and I felt Mike Graham described him best, in which he said, Jarrett broke over 6,000 guitars and didn't draw a dime, yet he thought he was a bigger draw than Hulk Hogan. This is a little dangerous for me to answer, but I'll go ahead and answer it. I like Jeff Jarrett. I always liked his in-ring wrestling. He was a tremendous wrestler. He grew up in the business. He was the son of Jerry Jarrett, a promoter in Memphis and in the South. And, you know, Jerry Jarrett worked with Vince for a number of years. But his drawing power outside of a company that he ran or his father ran was never really anything all that spectacular. Look at the track record. WWF twice or three times. Never went above the Intercontinental Championship level. And never really was the one that drew the people in. WCW, more than once. Never was the guy that drew people in. Yes, he was world champion in 2000, and good for him, he was a world champion there. But being a world champion in WCW in 99-2000 was like, you know, it was like being the WWF champion in 99-2000. Everybody got a term of that friggin' thing. It was ridiculous. So, and that with TNA, of course, he was a big draw because he booked himself on top as NWA champion. And then now with Global Force, he's going to be, I'm assuming he's not wrestling, but I haven't seen hide nor hair of a response as far as if we're going to be, you know, working with them or doing interviews with them or what. So I don't know what's going on with them. So if he doesn't wrestle for them, it'll be beneficial to them because Jeff Jarrett was a great wrestler, but never a great draw. Alright, time to delve into the Greg Cherry section of the program. Greg Cherry's first question. Do you think it's too early to think that Global Force Wrestling is trying to be like TNA in its glory days? I don't think that. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think it's too early at all. I think you're exactly right, Greg. I think that the use of the six-sided ring at their first event and the fact that Jeff Jarrett and his wife are in charge and the fact that they're trying to, you know, bring in the best of the best from all over the world outside WWE and TNA and Ring of Honor, well, they have a couple Ring of Honor guys, shows that they are trying to establish themselves as a solid, you know, top-tier promotion, much like TNA did back in 2002 when they adopted the NWA name with their branding and recognized the two top championships in NWA at the time. And I think Global Force is trying to establish itself as its own entity, but they have a lot of names that we've associated with the big stars in the past. Jeff Jarrett, Jim Cornette, you know, Chris Masters from former WWE superstar. You know, the Bullet Club's there. The Young Bucks are there. They're in the Bullet Club. I meant Carl and Doc. They have a lot of top guys from the indie circuit and from around the world, but are they trying to be like TNA in its glory days? Maybe, but I think they're trying more to be their own entity and trying to establish themselves as a viable competitor to the status quo. What do you think we can expect when Triple H eventually takes over the WWE? I think we can expect Triple H to follow what his father-in-law has modeled for so many years, but I don't think that we're going to see a lot of similarities between the two ways the men run the company. I pray that the business model he has adapted for NXT and the way he books that program is translated into the main event level when he does finally get the book. And I hope that Triple H will take WWE into the next 30, 40 years, however long he's in charge, with Stephanie and then with their children, or Shane's children, or however it works out. WWE is in good hands. And people knock Triple H a lot, but I sit here every single time I come in front of a camera, and I always think in the back of my mind that NXT is the greatest wrestling program on broadcast right now as we sit here talking to you. And I don't change that opinion. They're great every single week, and it's because of Triple H's booking style. If he applies that to WWE, WWE's in good shape. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Talk Wrestling. We will be back next week with more from you. We'll be putting topics on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram for you to comment on, so stay tuned for that. We will see you next time on Talk Wrestling.